know I sent you like a list of questions, but the main thing that I struggle with the most is the reading comp section. And I just don't know what it is. On a good day, I could just go through all the 4 essays and do reasonably well, but on a bad day, it can go really bad. And I just don't know what I'm doing wrong. Maybe I should start with the technique that I'm following. Maybe that's wrong.
Okay, sure. So what technique are you following right now, G?
Okay, so I'm spending around maybe like 2.5-ish minutes on like reading the passage, and I don't like mark anything on the passage, but like if I practice it on my iPad, and I'll just have like the scratch paper like I would on the exam, and like my hand would just like keep working, but I'll keep reading because I don't want to lose speed writing down stuff. And I only write down the main point of each of the paragraphs in the passage. And if there's an example, I'll just say EX or something. I won't like write down the entire thing because there's no point, because I'll have to go back to it. So, and then I just jump into the questions. I already sort of know what the main point of the whole passage would be. So like I go in and do like the main point question and the primary purpose question first, like regardless of if it's the first one or not. Like I'll look it up and I'll do it first. Then I'll like go in and do some of those like according to the passage, sort of detailing kind of questions, and then I'll do the line reference ones, and then at the end I'll do the author's attitude and the inference sort of questions, because I feel like if I like follow that order, it helps me like understand more and like know more by the inference question. Yeah, I guess that's what I do. Oh yeah, and with the reading, I was looking at one of your videos, and I found that you asked to visualize the things, and like I really find the reading enjoyable. So I just like reading all of that dense stuff. I like it, and but I sort of stopped doing that. Like I used to do that at some point in my practice, and in general, regardless of what I'm reading, I'll like make those analogies. But then I just realized maybe I should be doing more of that, but I don't know.
Your approach sounds perfectly reasonable. Like that's along the lines of what I recommend. You're extracting the main point, solving those questions first, then the line reference, then the more general inferential in nature. So that's a good, solid approach. I'm wondering, how much exactly do you write down for each of those paragraphs? How many words approximately would you say?
Should I like hold up? Like this is a practice thing. Can you see it? Like
I can see it.
That's
Nice.
It's like really big, not much. So it's basically like it had 4 paragraphs. So I just made like 4 points, and I'll just say if it's like, you know, those thesis or like a thesis passage, whatever. So I'll just be like view 1, I'll just put in like a V1 or whatever, so that I know that where can I find those views. Or like if it's something like if this is like wrong, I'll do like a shorthand of a cross or whatever. I mean, sorry, if it's against the main view, if it's criticizing, if it's like a critic's view, I'll do like a little cross, just draw symbols, but that's pretty much it.
As long as you're able to understand it, that's fine.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Now, you did say, though, that reading comprehension is somewhat hit or miss for you. What are the indicators that it's going to be a miss for you? Are there certain topics that you find more difficult, or is it the questions?
Oh, it's not about the topics. I don't know what happens. I guess sometimes in the third paragraph, I'll just take longer than usual, maybe because I'm mentally exhausted. Like that won't happen if the reading comp like shows up as the first section on the test, which is when I'm like mentally the freshest, and like it would generally just fly really smoothly. But if it's like the third section and I'm drained out, like probably by the third paragraph or third passage, I'll just start rereading things or like trying to remember the details, which I know that I shouldn't do. I'll just lose time, and then I won't have time for the last one, or like won't be able to complete the last one completely. That happens sometimes.
Okay, so what I heard was a bit about maybe getting fatigued if it's appearing later in the exam overall, and then maybe running out of time for the later passages as well.
Yeah, like if I mess up like one passage and I take like, I don't know, like 20 seconds more, that's like a huge loss. I just like mess up everything. Plus I also get stressed because I know that I took more time, and then I rush, and then I lose points because I rushed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what if you were to potentially, let's say within a section, could you maybe speed up a little bit on the earlier, easier passages?
Yeah, that's the other thing. So are they arranged in like an order? Is the first one easier?
I would say on average, the first passage is going to be a little bit easier.
Okay.
They're not a perfect order of difficulty. The hardest one could be the second, could be the third.
Yeah.
If you're feeling comfortable, if you're feeling good, if it's a passage that you feel like you have a good understanding of, then maybe you could shave off a little bit of time and not second guess yourself quite or double check quite so much.
Yeah. I've tried doing that because I just like filtered them out with the easy ones, and then I just aimed for like, okay, 6 minutes like each, which was like lower than 7. Like it was just to like speed me up, but I know it's gonna take 7. So but when I do that, I think I just make more mistakes if I don't go slow. Like I shouldn't be losing points on the easy ones, and I don't. But if I try to like speed myself more, like I feel like I do, I don't. So how do I do that? How do I get faster at the easier ones if that's a thing I can do?
For a passage, let's say there's a passage where you thoroughly understand the main point well, and you're doing the main point question, you find a choice that matches your pre-phrase. You still go through all 5, but if it matches your pre-phrase, you pick it confidently and you just move on after that. You don't keep cycling through the same choices again and again, or going back to the passage again and again for the support if you already feel pretty comfortable with it. It's kind of more like, it's not really as much of a science as it is an art of just letting go and training yourself to let go.
Okay. Yeah, I can do that. Sure. I don't know. Is that the best way to speed up? Like just get faster at the easier ones? And like, what if sometimes, even though I understand the main point really well, I'll definitely like think twice about it just because it's the reading comp. Like I'll just think that I'm definitely making a mistake. Like it can't be that easy, and then I guess I'll still waste time. Is there like a way to know that this is something that's easy and I shouldn't be spending that much time on it, and there's another passage that might require more time?
Well, I'll give you a couple of things to think about. One of them is, like we said, the first passage is likely going to be on the easier side. And there are plenty of passages that you are proficient in. There are just certain specific ones that are giving you trouble. So you've got the ability, and if you know it's an easy one, those two things intersecting suggest that you should trust your gut on it. Okay. Secondly, if your extraction or articulation of the main point matches well with a given answer choice, that's a really good thing, because reading comprehension is usually picking the best of the worst. Their articulation of things is not typically how we would phrase them. But if you see a match, that's somewhat extraordinary. And there's reason to trust that. Usually what happens is none of the 5 choices look good.
Yep. Okay.
So you asked, is this the best way to speed up on the easy ones? And that's part of it. That's part of it. There are multiple things you can do to work on reading comprehension timing. One of them is trusting your gut. One of them is speeding up on the easier ones. And the other thing, of course, is improving your understanding of the more difficult ones.
Okay.
And so that's going to come from, well, save a running list of all the passages that have ever given you trouble. Maybe there's a trend, or maybe you're just getting them wrong or having difficulty because they're complex wording, or the questions are difficult. And so those are questions to review. Those are passages to review. And for every single question, match it with the relevant lines in the text. There is always textual support. It is sometimes difficult to find, but finding it under untimed conditions as you review, you'll start to learn how to extract it.
Okay. Got it. And so every time I do a passage, and if I get it wrong, or if I don't get it wrong, I'll try to like make a few points and like note it down so I can come back to it and have a look at the review notes that I've made. And one of the major things that I have a problem with is when there's a specific line reference question, like I go in and I try to infer things that aren't there in the passage, or like I treat it like it's an inference question, but obviously not in the questions that like state line number 91 or whatever, or like sometimes it's just not that obvious, but they're actually talking about something really specific that's already mentioned, and I don't have to extrapolate that thing from the passage. So
right.
How do I, sometimes I get confused between those question types, I think. So how do I like drill those in?
Well, if we're talking about questions with line references versus those without, on the digital LSAT, one thing you should know is that they no longer use line numberings on the digital specifically. They haven't removed references altogether, but on the digital LSAT itself, instead of giving you line numberings, they will highlight the key phrase in the text they are referring to. You should go on LSAT's site and look at this. It's not a major fundamental change, but it is a stylistic change.
Okay, I think that saves time, maybe.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, because you can quickly see exactly what they're referring to. So go on LSAC's familiarization tool, familiar.lsac.org, and you'll see on the three digital LSATs there, the passage has no line numberings at all. And then for any questions that previously would have had a line numbered reference, instead they just highlight it in kind of like a turquoise-ish color in the question stem, same in the passage, and that's where you want to look.
Okay.
So that will tell you automatically this is one of the references. Okay. You haven't looked yet?
Yeah. No, I have, and I have a question about that as well. I don't know, I didn't notice that. So, I told you that I follow that order of the questions. Like I did it on the test format they have up there, and then I lost time like searching for those questions. Like, it's not necessary that you have the main point thing as the first one. Like generally you do. What if it's not? And then I'll just like, how you can only look at like a certain number of questions and you like skip on them. And I just lost time. So is that a bad strategy to like follow that order? Or should I just like keep doing the questions as they come? Because I feel like I waste more time looking for the questions sometimes.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a valid one. So yeah, on the digital LSAT, you can only see one question at a time. Yeah. And so so anything strategy that involves jumping around will now involve a little bit of clicking left and right rather than seeing the entire spread of questions associated at once. Now, what do? It's really a personal decision. I still like to skip around a little bit. I find it's not that much effort for me to click left and right, but it's worth experimenting with to see if it works for you.
Okay. Yeah, I can do that. Right. I think those were the main questions that I have. And I just have a similar problem with the logic games. The occurrence of that is like rare, like it doesn't happen a lot. Like I mostly go through all the games, but when I don't, it's like the third game when I like mess it up and then I don't have time for the last one. Mm-hmm. So so similar strategies there as well, like to speed up on the easier ones and like leave more time for the.
Yeah, there are. That's part of what I would say.
Okay.
Yeah, so speed up on the easier ones, save more time for the harder ones. I do recommend a little bit of jumping around as well. Orientation questions, then local, then global, as you've probably seen. Then the one last thing I would say is if you're screwing up a game, that suggests that maybe there's something with maybe misdiagramming a rule. And so I would want you to double check your diagramming and understanding of the rules before you move on to the questions, just to make sure.
Yeah, that's mostly always the case. Also, like if I'm aiming for like a mid 70s or like a 170s or higher score, like is there like a certain number of points that I shouldn't lose, like in practice, section wise?
Yeah, there is. I actually have a lot to say on this. So if you want, let's say the typical 170 scorer typically gets about 10 questions wrong. So those 10 questions are going to be typically perfect, maybe -1 on games, then -3 on each of the other sections. So reading comprehension and both logical reasonings, you get about 9 or 10 wrong there. That's what the typical 170 score looks like. So you really want to perfect games. And then it's extremely difficult to perfect the other sections, so you just aim to minimize there.
Okay.
That's what you want to look for. And one last thing I would say on this is that typically people do sometimes experience a test day drop where their practice test scores are a little bit higher than the actual. And so you'd want to comfortably be at least a few points above 170 if your goal was a 170.
Sure. Okay. That's hard. So like I've never scored more than a 175, which was like a singular incident. I don't even count it like it's an outlier. Generally I like score around like 169 to 173. So like in practice I should be scoring like a 177 or something to get like a 175.
Well, first off, I would not discount the 175. That is a real score that you got. So that's something
that could be chance.
Sure, it could be. But that's the nice thing about the LSAT is that you can take it multiple times. So let's say if you got a 170 the first time, maybe you would want to retake it to get a 175. Now, let's say if you want to comfortably be fairly secure, you're going to get a 170, then I would want your practice test score range to be, let's say, 173 to 177. If most of your test scores were in that range, then at worst, we would expect a 170. More likely, you might get a 172 or a 173, maybe on the lower end. But again, I should clarify that some people perform worse under pressure, some perform better under pressure, and there is an element of chance as well.
Okay, so are there any last tips on how to how much I should be practicing every day?
How much are you willing to practice every day?
Well, if you told me that if I gave in 10 hours every day and I'll get that score, I'll do it. Like, what's sake? Is there like a number? Just like do whatever at this point.
That's a good question. Okay. All right. So maximum 5-6 hours a day.
Okay.
10 would lead to burnout. So there's too much and there's too little. The sweet spot is typically 5 to 6 hours with breaks scattered throughout.
Okay.
But this is of course focused studies, not distractions of phones and internet and friends and other things like that. Like you focus, you knock it out, you're done for the day.
Okay. So how many tests should I be doing in a week, like complete tests? Because I'm aiming for the October test.
I would suggest at most 2 per week, typically, along with detailed review of those exams and never on consecutive days. So maybe you want to do 1 Saturday and 1 Wednesday or 1 Tuesday and 1 Friday, ideally a couple days in between, so you have sufficient time for rest and then review of those exams.
Okay, right.
And I would suggest one last thing would be to maybe do at least ideally 10 full-length timed exams before test day as 5 sections, realistic conditions, so that test day itself is just another dry run.
Okay. Another question that I have is, just to build stamina, sometimes I try to do like 6 sections in a go, or some like, well, yeah, 6 is the most. Is that a good idea? Like, is that bad?
It's okay to do that every now and then. It's okay to do it every now and then, just to push the limits a little bit. I don't think that you need to do it for every single sitting, or even most of them. I think maybe if, let's say, if you were going to do 10 timed exams, maybe you could do 2 of them like that, just to see what it's like. And I would do those as 3 back-to-back, break 3 more. I would not do 4, break 2. 3, break 3, more close, because let's say, because on test day you have 3 sections back-to-back. Then 2 more. So if you were going to do 6 in a sitting rather than 5, you could either do reasonably 3, break 3, or 4, break 2. I suggest 3, break 3, because 4 back-to-back you will never experience on test day, but you will experience 3 back-to-back on test day. So that more closely resembles the exam itself.
Okay.
So G, we're just about up with time for today, but it's been a pleasure connecting with you. What would you say is the biggest insight you got from our session today?
Just some clarity that what I'm doing is okay, and that I need to drill some of these things more. It's almost like I knew some of these things, but I hadn't heard it from an expert, just to like reassure myself that, yeah, that's right, I do that kind of thing. And definitely like the timing stuff, like those were really helpful tips, because I'm really confused about the timing in general.
Fantastic. I'm glad it was helpful.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you so much. That was brilliant.